Things are good right now. Nothing is wrong. There is no emergency, no crisis waiting around the corner that you know about. The day is quiet. The people around you are fine. By every reasonable measure, this is a moment in which you should be able to relax, and you cannot. Not a small, not quite able to relax. A real physical, muscular inability to let the body soften into the peace that is objectively available to it. Your shoulders stay up, your jaw stays tight, your attention stays just slightly ahead of the present moment, scanning. For what, you cannot say exactly, just scanning, just checking, just maintaining that low-level readiness for something that has not arrived and may not arrive, and yet the readiness remains, because the readiness has always remained, and you do not know how to turn it off. And when people tell you to relax, and they do tell you, with the particular kind of cheerful confidence of people whose nervous systems do not run this program, you want to explain that it is not that simple, that the instruction to relax does not reach the part of you that is responsible for the not relaxing, that the problem is not that you haven't thought of relaxing. The problem is that something in you does not believe, despite all the available evidence, that it is safe to. This is the psychology of people who cannot relax even when nothing is wrong. And it is not anxiety in the dramatic sense. It is quieter than that, more constant, more woven into the everyday texture of how you exist. It is a nervous system that learned a long time ago to stay ready, and it has been staying ready ever since. The nervous system is not irrational. It does not run programs without reason. Every pattern it runs was taught to it by something that happened, something that made the pattern useful, made it necessary, made it the difference between managing and not managing. The inability to relax is not a malfunction. It is a very well-functioning adaptation to an environment that required constant readiness. That environment was almost always an early one. You grew up in a home where the emotional temperature was unpredictable, where calm could become chaos without warning, where you learned to read the signs, the particular quality of a silence, the specific sound of a door, the way a parent's body changed when something was wrong, because reading the signs early gave you time to prepare, time to adjust, time to make yourself smaller or more helpful or less present, or whatever the situation was going to require. You became, through no choice of your own, a highly sensitive environmental monitoring system. Your nervous system calibrated itself to the specific frequency of the household you grew up in. It learned which sounds meant safety and which meant danger, which moods were safe to exist alongside and which required management, which version of the adults around you was present and what that version was likely to need from you. And it got very good at this, extraordinarily good. The kind of good that, in a difficult environment, is the difference between being prepared and being caught off guard. But here's the thing about a nervous system calibrated to constant readiness. It does not know when the calibration is no longer necessary. It does not receive a memo that says the environment has changed, that you are no longer in the household that required this level of monitoring, that the people around you now are not the people whose moods had to be tracked and managed and prepared for. It just runs the program, in every environment, including the safe ones, including the ones where nothing is wrong and nothing is coming, and the readiness has nowhere to go and nothing to do except exhaust the person running it.
The hypervigilance that protected you then is the tension that stays with you now. The skill that kept you safe in the unpredictable household is the thing that makes it impossible to soften in a predictable life. You learned to be ready, and you are still ready, long after the thing you were ready for stopped being something you needed to be ready for. It feels like having a fire alarm that goes off for no reason. The alarm is real, the sound is real, the urgency the sound produces in your body is entirely real. But there is no fire, there is no smoke, and there is no way to explain to the alarm that the building is fine. It just keeps going, and you live around it. You build your life around a background noise that other people do not seem to hear. It feels like being on call when you are supposed to be off, like there is always a part of you that cannot fully commit to the present moment because it is waiting to be needed, waiting for the situation that will require something from you. And that waiting, that low-level perpetual readiness, means you are never fully anywhere. You are always slightly somewhere else, slightly ahead of the present, slightly prepared for what has not happened yet. Vacations are not restful. Weekends are not restorative. Sunday evenings have a particular quality of dread that you cannot fully explain because there is nothing specific coming, just Monday, which is fine, which is manageable, and yet the dread is there. Holidays with family are not relaxing even when the family is peaceful, because peaceful is not the same as safe, and your nervous system knows the difference. Peace can end, calm can shift. The monitoring cannot afford to stop just because nothing is currently happening, because historically, nothing currently happening has never meant nothing is coming. And then there is the specific exhaustion of this kind of living, not the exhaustion of doing too much, the exhaustion of being continuously on, of having a system that does not fully power down, of waking up in the morning already slightly tired because even sleep was not quite rest. There was a part of you maintaining readiness through the night, processing, scanning, keeping the light on just in case. That exhaustion is hard to explain to people who do not carry it. It is the exhaustion of a person whose nervous system has been working a second shift for their entire life. And underneath all of it, underneath the scanning and the readiness and the inability to soften, is something that is almost never named: a grief. A quiet, accumulated grief for all the moments of peace that were available and could not be received, all the still days that the still could not reach, all the safe spaces that felt unsafe despite every available signal to the contrary. The grief of a nervous system that has been working so hard for so long that it has forgotten what it was working this hard for. The first thing it creates is a particular relationship with productivity. When your nervous system cannot rest, busyness becomes the closest available substitute, because being productive is sanctioned alertness. It is readiness with a socially acceptable form. If you are working, if you are achieving, if you are building or solving something, the readiness has somewhere to go. It has a purpose. It is no longer vigilance for its own sake. It is vigilance pointed at something real. And the relief of that, the relief of readiness finally having a target, means that busy people with this pattern often feel better when they are busy, and worse when they are not. Worse when they slow down, worse on holiday, worse in the Sunday afternoon quiet that has nothing to justify the ongoing hum of their nervous system. The second thing it creates is difficulty with intimacy. Real intimacy requires a kind of softness, a willingness to be unguarded, to be present without monitoring, to exist in the company of another person without assessing the situation. And for the person whose nervous system is always on, that softness is very hard to access. They can be warm, they can be generous, they can care deeply, but there is always a layer of management between them and full presence, a thin monitoring screen through which all experience passes before it is received. And the people who love them can sometimes feel it, not a coldness, but a distance, an almost but not quite quality to the connection that they cannot name and the person themselves may not be aware of. The third thing it creates is a complicated relationship with good news. When something goes well, when a project succeeds, when a period of genuine stability arrives, there is often a reaction that is not quite relief. It is more like suspicion, a waiting for the other shoe, a sense that good things are temporary in a way that bad things are not. Because historically, for the nervous system that grew up in an unpredictable environment, that was true. Calm was always temporary, good was always precarious, and so when good arrives now, the nervous system does not soften into it. It watches it, It waits for it to change. It remains ready for the version of events where the good thing turns out to have been a before. Think about the last time you were in a genuinely peaceful situation. Not exciting, not stimulating, peaceful. Nothing required, nothing urgent. The kind of moment that is, by design, for resting. And ask yourself what you did with it. Did you rest? Or did you find something to do? Did you generate a task, check something, think through something that didn't need thinking through right now? Scroll through something that required your attention in no real sense, but provided the experience of monitoring? Think about how you feel on holiday after 3 or 4 days. Not the first day, which is often fine because there is novelty to engage with. 3 or 4 days in, when the novelty has worn off and what remains is simply unscheduled time. What happens in your body? Does the ease deepen, or does something start to itch? Does the unscheduled time start to feel like a problem that needs solving? Do you start thinking about what you will do when you get back, what needs doing, what you should have done before you left? And think about your body right now, not metaphorically, physically. Your shoulders, your jaw, your hands, the muscles across your chest and upper back. How much tension is there? How much of that tension has been there so long that you stopped noticing it? How much of it would still be there if you made a deliberate effort to release it and then stopped making the effort? Because the body keeps the score of this pattern in a way that is very literal. The tension lives in specific muscles. The readiness has a physical location, and noticing it, actually physically noticing it, not just knowing about it intellectually, is the beginning of a very slow and very necessary conversation between the part of you that knows you are safe and the part of you that has not received the message yet. The nervous system that learned to stay ready learned it for a reason, and that reason was real. The unpredictability was real. The necessity of monitoring was real. The protection that the readiness provided was real. And acknowledging all of that, fully, without minimizing it, is the first thing. Because the readiness is not a flaw. It is a piece of intelligence that got lodged in the wrong era. An answer to a question that has changed. A solution that outlasted the problem it was solving. What the nervous system needs, and this is slow work, unglamorous work, work that does not happen through understanding alone, is evidence, not argument, not the intellectual knowledge that things are different now. Actual, repeated, embodied evidence that relaxing does not lead to being caught off guard, that letting the shoulders drop does not mean something bad happens, that the peaceful moments can be received without the reception being punished, that it is possible to be in the quiet and have the quiet remain quiet. This evidence is built slowly, through small moments of deliberately softening and discovering that the softening was survivable, through choosing rest when the impulse says keep working, and finding that the thing you were about to work on is still there afterward, through sitting in the still Sunday afternoon and letting it be still, even when every part of you wants to generate something to justify the alertness, through breathing in the quiet and not filling it, through finding out one careful experiment at a time that peace does not require monitoring to remain. You have been ready for a very long time. Your readiness has been extraordinary. It has gotten you through things that would have broken other people who were not as prepared. And it has also cost you something. It has cost you the moments, the still ones, the safe ones, the ones where nothing was required of you and you could have simply been. Those moments were available. They were there, and the readiness made them impossible to inhabit fully. Those moments are still being offered. Every day, somewhere in your life, there is a moment that is asking nothing of you, a moment that has no emergency in it, no requirement, no need for your monitoring. The question is not whether those moments exist. They do. The question is whether this is the day you decide to let one of them land, to actually be in one, all the way in, with nothing held back and nothing held in reserve, just present, just still, just here, without the readiness, without the scan, without the preparation for what has not yet come and may never come, just here, in the quiet, safe. Next episode, there is a person who gives and gives and gives, and one day realizes they are completely empty, not because they ran out of love, because they never learned to keep any for themselves. The psychology of self-abandonment, what it is, where it starts, and why the person running it is almost never aware they are doing it. That one is next.